They are. Yeah, I can imagine I forgot that. So basically, an opportunity for you to meet Will, ask some questions of Will, tell us a bit about yourself, and then also, you know, where you want to race, your targets, all that kind of stuff. So that hopefully we can then go away and Will can plan, and then we can have another catch up over the next however many days to kind of, you know, run through your program, tell you how it's going to work, and answer all those questions. So this is kind of like a setting the scene kind of conversation to just learn a bit about each other.
Yeah,
that's okay. Are you, I mean, I know you gave a little bit of information when you kind of applied, but if we start from scratch, are you able to just basically tell us a little bit about yourself, and also, you know, yourself and your riding, really?
Yeah, of course. Okay. So I got into cycling like fairly recently, like maybe 3 years ago. I was basically doing work that was like super intense, and I was on my phone all the time and constantly like contactable, and just started cycling to be unable for like no one could get hold of me. Started by doing like really horrible, just like 100-kilometer road rides on a shitty old bike that nobody would ever want to ride, but it was all I had. Came back to London, started working as a bike messenger, which is how I kind of started learning track cycling, or like fixed gear cycling, and did some fixed crits with like a fixed crit team, which was fun. But I think I saw my collarbone, my friend snap her collarbone cleanly in half, just like a really kind of calm course, and was just like, actually, I'd rather try and go quickly. I'd rather be able to go full gas and basically go as fast as I can, rather than do one race and think I'm probably going to break 5 bones in the course of it. Which is how I started cycling at Herne Hill, and that was last year, start of the season last year, so around like March, April. So it's only been a year of doing track, really.
And did you race on track last year? So
yeah.
What did you kind of, the Herne Hill, they have track league and training and all kinds of stuff. What was it that you got stuck into?
Pretty much everything they had. I did track league, I did the opens, I did women's league, so pretty much all the racing you could do there.
Oh, cool. And have you raced, and is that all you've raced? So far you haven't raced indoors?
No, I haven't raced indoors. I've done training indoors, and I've got my accreditation indoors so that I can. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's a big tick box.
Yeah, I really wanted to be able to race and kind of get that experience down. So yeah, the very long accreditation process because of COVID took its toll.
Yeah, I can imagine. I know it's quite a long-winded process anyway, to be honest, isn't it? It's especially if you can ride, it's a shame that it takes months and months to get it done. And then in terms of, that's great, by the way. That's really, you know, you've sort of thrown yourself into cycling, so it's nice to see such a diverse. Whilst you're kind of reasonably new to it, you've like really gone for it, which is good. So in terms of like where you want to take it, I know you mentioned nationals and things. Are you able to kind of elaborate on where you'd like to take your cycling?
Yeah, so I think because women's cycling, like, or women's track at the moment isn't like, it's a big thing in general, but there aren't that many people do it, so the opportunities are still quite slim. Yeah. So for example, like last year, there was only, like, for women's races, there was only women's league at Herne Hill, and you know, they've started doing different stuff, but it's a very different game when you're in a massively huge mixed bag of differently aged, differently kind of gendered riders. So you could, like, for example, track league is never like a good way to gauge how well you're doing. It's basically like who turns up. And the more I raced, the more I realized I actually wanted to be pitted against people who I could compare myself to, and actually like keep moving towards, but basically just really want to see how far I can take it. It's my only major hobby. My partner's like fully understandable that like this is everything that I want to do, and everything kind of revolves around that.
Which is good.
Quite common with cyclists, isn't it?
Yeah.
Lifestyle. And then and just in terms of your ambitions, is it just on track? Are you interested in crits and bits and pieces like that as well? I know you've done them in the past, but going forwards, what do you think?
So the team that I just started with this year, like, it's mostly road cyclists. So like I'm I'm keen to like do bits and bobs, but kind of was using it as experience and training for track, because it is the only thing that like whenever I do it, it's the only thing like that I really, really love.
That's fine. That's good. I like it too. That's what we did. That's what we did. I mean, I think that's really good. Thank you for sharing all that. I think it's probably a good opportunity to say to Will, because you haven't spoken to Will before, just to set the background with him a little bit as well, so you know kind of his yeah, I guess what he's all about and why he's involved as well. So Will, are you happy to like just say a little bit about your background as well, mate?
Yeah, sure. So I'm 21 years old and I'm from Devon originally. I started off cycling doing something called Cycle Speedway. I did that from the age of 6 till 16. It's quite an amateur sport. I won quite a few national titles doing that. And then I guess the Olympics and that sort of happened. So I got quite inspired when I was about 11, 12 to start trying to do road and track to try and make it my job. So I started chipping away, and eventually I got onto the ODA program, and then managed to win a race in the National Road Series and the National Points Race title as a youth. And then I got onto the Junior Academy, did the Track Worlds in Switzerland, which was an experience. We were on to win it, and my teammate crashed, so we yeah, we didn't even get a medal in the end. But yeah, in the team pursuit. And then yeah, I guess I've just been doing road, and then I got luckily enough got selected to be on the Senior Academy, which is where I'm now for the last 4 years. It wasn't meant to be 4 years, but with COVID, it sort of like stopped my progression a little bit, because there's been no races. But yeah, so I probably know quite a lot of people, you know, like Ethan Hayter, Fred Wright,
Yeah.
Oscar. I live with Oscar Nelson Julian.
Yeah, I heard.
Yeah, bless him. So yeah, and then recently I was quite interested in the thought of coaching, because I always did it when I used to do cycle speed, I used to help out the youngsters and stuff like that. And I realized like my life has become quite sort of, it's all about me sort of thing. And I thought, like, I've learned so much and I've had so many experiences that so many people don't get to have. It would be nice to be able to share that with other people. And also I spend a lot of time sort of, well, when you're not training, you sort of, as a full-time cyclist, you're like in your bed and stuff like that. So I thought it'd be better to get off TikTok and actually try and use what I've learned to sort of help other people. And yeah, so that's I got in touch with Pete, and then Pete got back to me recently and asked if I'd be interested in joining Blackline. So yeah, that's where we're at now, and we're sort of just getting started, so things might be a little bit rusty.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, hopefully long term we'll have a really successful endurance pathway on the Blackline Academy. Well, not academy, I don't know what you call it, the Blackline team. So yeah, that's where we're at. And I'm still training full time. So I'm racing the National Omnium Champs this weekend and the National Madison tomorrow. So yeah, it's a little bit different to a normal coach that wouldn't be cycling. But I think with myself and Pete, when I am doing major competitions, like I've got Glasgow World Cup at the end of the month and stuff like that, it's all scheduled in. So you won't not have a point of contact. It'll just be more like Pete might take the reins a little bit more then, and I'll maybe take a little bit of a back foot. But that probably, in all honesty, when I'm doing competitions, I'm still sat in my hotel room at times, so I can still reply to WhatsApps and stuff. So it's nice to take my mind off the race. But yeah, so that's sort of where we're at now, and it's just, I think it's quite exciting. We looked at all the profiles and all the applicants, and it was interesting because it didn't even take me 2 minutes, to be honest. I read through them all, and literally yours stood out, purely because we're not just a road coaching thing. This is quite a new thing, and I think there's not a lot of track based, apart from BC, there's not a lot of track sort of coaches, and Pete's managed to tap into that with the sprint, and hopefully I can do so more of the endurance. And that's probably where my strong point is compared to other coaches, is with tactics and stuff like that I have sort of become a bit of a norm for me. But then when, like, I was talking to Pete about it the other day, and we were doing like spider diagrams and stuff, and you realize like all these little processes and things that have been ingrained into you since you were like 16. And so yeah, hopefully I can share some of that with you, and we can help you achieve your goals.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's also what I find, like, so I'd always seen Blackline through other people and other people doing it, but everybody was a sprinter. And like, as much as I love having a go at sprinting, I'm not a sprinter by nature. I'm obviously in the realms of track. Like, you can, it's like, oh yeah, endurance. And someone's like, cool, we'll go for 200k road ride. You're like, yeah, okay, fine, that's fine. But this, like, yeah, the tactics and like the strategy in endurance stuff is like I like Devil's my favorite purely because it's so ruthless.
Yeah, I know. I've been disqualified at a few Devils before. So.
Oh no.
Yeah. But, yeah, I'm doing the Devil at Glasgow as well, so that'll be interesting.
Yeah, I'm really gutted. I wanted to come up and watch it, but it's just a little bit too far.
Yeah, I know. My parents are saying the same thing.
Interesting, to be fair, because Blackline has always been sprinters. Like that's the way I kind of created it, was that it's the only sprint team really. And at the time it was. There's a few others that have popped up since, but it was really unique because the kind of when I spoke about the vision at the time was that every sprinter was that like the only sprinter in the road club kind of thing. So I was like, well, let's get them all together and make a team. And it's funny how when you speak to people, you know, because off the back of that, all our kind of stuff we put out, all the coaching stuff, all the content we ever put out, the whole thing's designed around sprinting and tactics and being like better bike riders, but in a sprint sense, not in a road sense. And it's funny how now that we've begun to explore working with Will and the endurance side of stuff, there's exactly the same gap in the endurance side of track cycling, which I never really, because I wasn't involved with that in the same way up in sprint. There's exactly the same gap where it's still people whose number one priority is track league, open events, nationals. There's so few race opportunities, and they're still often members of road clubs, and the level of training doesn't really get above power, like improving power basically. So to actually get technical input is hard, and I think it does bring challenges, you know, to get to kind of how we're going to do that. But you know, the whole philosophy of coaching is you've got to make people better bike riders, not just test better. So that's kind of the way to think of it. So we're going to have to be creative in how we do that. Like if you can get friends that can film a whole scratch race, you know, it's a bit more of a they need to be a better friend than the one that films a final lap, I suppose. But there's space to do stuff like that and film it and watch it and be kind of, you know, take the same process of pause it at any given moment and be like, what are you thinking here? Why are you in this position? If you like it, great. If you don't, how can you change it? That sort of concept. I think would be really, really good to do as well, you know, on top of whatever program you do. So you basically get better at racing. So yeah, it's interesting, and I'm learning about that as well. And what I mean by that is I didn't realise quite how big the gap was, because everybody says, "Oh, there's no track coaches out there. There's no track coaches out there." And you think about it, and actually, it's sort of true. Like all the stuff you see is so road focused.
I think that's one of the things where like why I'm always like looking out for other stuff that's coming up, because this is like, I feel like this, especially for the women's side of things, it's really hard to see a progression between like, okay, cool, you know, there's, you know, you can do just like obviously in the scope of what I'm seeing at Herne Hill, but like, you know, you do like the women's league and the A's is like, I'll be entering the A's at women's league this year, and then yeah, you can do like the track league, but then apart from that, there's such a massive gap between there and then where you might want to be. It's like how do you bridge that gap? Like there's nothing that happens in the middle.
Exactly, and the whole British cycling pathway is obviously set up for teenagers through to, how old are you, by the way?
I just turned 26.
26. The whole thing's set up for teenagers basically. So as soon as you drop beyond that, then there's just no support. So if you were 15, there'd be loads of opportunities, because they invite you on coach stuff. They put on events, there's youth on, there's lots of things. But then as soon as you get beyond that, and then it gets harder, because typically people drop out of the sport as well, so that they either come from that kind of pathway and are really good, or they drop out because it's a complete change of mindset if they realize they're no longer going to like make it. So there aren't many people in their 20s racing who aren't really, really, really good because they've done that kind of pathway bit and then are then successful. So I think even the people I coach, there aren't that many people in their 20s that I coach, because they either kind of drift towards the master stuff or I get it is challenging, but hopefully as well we can look at what options you have, and obviously that's part of it, is to plan your race calendar, and work out that what training races there are. There's only the next 3 months, but there's still plenty to be looking at.
And to add to that, like you're in a great spot being at Herne Hill. I think it's probably the epicenter of endurance cycling that isn't Manchester or anything like that. So I think there will be ways of sort of tailoring. Obviously, you're saying you race with men and stuff like that, but that can also help draw you out. It's not always looking at that and thinking, oh, I got beaten by Pete this week, sort of thing. But like, I need to sort of like work out how I can sort of get closer to beating him and stuff like that. So it's not all sort of like oh, I'm racing men. Like a lot of the well, I used to say this to my sister when she used to race cycle speedway. When she was racing against boys, she'd end up beating the boys and stuff like that. And then when she'd go and race the girls, she'd be like so much better, just because they'd just get drawn out. So I think you're in a really good spot in Herne Hill, and I hope there's a lot of classes. Obviously, I can speak to Oscar, so I get insight. I haven't actually been Herne Hill myself, but it's exciting.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions for us?
I think at this point there's probably like too many different things that I can even I can't think of one thing.
That's fine. That's absolutely fine. In terms of, do you want to explain in terms of kicking things off, like what the process is, just to get up and running? So we could look like.
Yeah, that would be really good.
Well, I think we're gonna. Pete, have you haven't sent out the sheet yet? Have you, with the sort of. No, so we're going to send you out a sheet to fill out, and basically it just comes up with lots of, just so we can find out about you really and sort of where you're at, and what your goals are, and from there we can look at the next 3 months, and we can sort of tailor your training around where you're at, what sort of sessions and stuff are available to you to sort of help include that, and also where you want to be, and sort of bridging that gap. So we'll work backwards, sort of thing, in phases, and we'll start off, say I don't know, say possibly you struggle with a bit of endurance or something in longer races. Maybe we'll do like an endurance block where we'll focus on that and stuff like that, and then as we get closer to the event or something you're targeting towards the end of the 3 months, then we can become a bit more specific about what we put into your training. And obviously we need to find out sort of things like, do you have power available and stuff like that, and that will all be on the spreadsheet, and we can sort of look at that, and then I can basically look at what's available to you and what you do in a week. So you're a cycling courier, that's like training on its own, isn't it? So you're basically a pro cyclist, but also tailoring it around your lifestyle and stuff like that, because we don't want, say if you have a big day at work, you're going to be knackered. We don't want to then put you in a hole that night, sort of thing. So making it very specific to you and sort of what you want to get out of it. And obviously working forwards, I want it to be like a two-way thing. Like if you've got any feedback for me, then you need to tell me, because I can't, as much as I can't read minds, I can only sort of see things as how I'd see them as a cyclist. But I'm not the one doing the training, so your feedback for me is very important, just as my feedback is for you. And it's not like I'm not going to be a coach, and it's not going to be like a sort of, oh, this is what you got to do, you need to do it, this is the military sort of thing. Like I want to work with you so you're inspired by your training program, because I've been coached by coaches before when you're doing a training program and you just like, you're out there and you're like, why am I doing this? Like I'd rather just be at home. So getting you believing in the program we set you, and obviously things change, people get ill and stuff like that, and just working with you to get the best out of yourself within these 3 months, I think. So
I think there's only 2 things that I've just remembered that I was going to say. one is I'd be really keen to know how look at the like breakdown of trainings and stuff, because previously it's basically just been like get given training programs until I'm, you know, absolutely wrecked, and like 9 weeks in a row, and then I'm like, okay, please I need a week off. And like I in my head I feel like I've always done better when it's been in blocks and I know when deload is coming up, so that I can kind of in my head be like, okay, cool, I can kind of get through this next week, because I know that like the week after that is going to be slightly less.
Yeah. So basically we'll sort of, we'll look at what you've done previously, because if you've been doing 20-hour weeks previously, that's completely different to someone that's been doing 5-hour weeks or whatever. And we can sort of look at as well, like your feedback's very important, because there's going to be times where we want you to be a bit tired, but then we don't want you to be getting so tired you're getting ill, sort of thing. So if you feel that way, you can sort of talk to me. It's not like you have to avoid me and be like, oh, I can't do a 5-hour ride tomorrow or something. I don't feel like that. Which it can be like sometimes. I've been in that situation. It's not a nice place to be. But yeah, I think we can work with you with that process of sort of breaking it down into like phases. We're probably working like one month blocks. So maybe like 3 weeks on, 1 week, sort of a bit easier. But that depends on sort of where you're at yourself.
Yeah, of course. And the only other thing I was going to ask is if anyone has, so I have no sort of like pre-race routine at all. I've never been able to work one out. I've tried so many different things and I never do one long enough to know whether it's working.
I think that I saw that on your application. I was thinking about that, because we sort of get so used to like a routine ourselves. I can definitely break something down for you.
Cool.
Especially if you say what sort of event it is and what time of day. Not necessarily like do this and this, but like just a bit of a guidance, like when to eat and stuff like that, what to eat, because that can be a massive thing with like endurance cycling and feeling sick and stuff like that. And then what warm up to do, how long before do I need to do a warm up, and stuff like that.
Cool. Yeah, that'd be brilliant.
No worries.
Cool. I think as well, just to add on the point you said, like the way, you know, in terms of how the training will be written, well, basically once we've got everything together and worked out a target event, it'd be really good to have that. We'll plan what's like a phase planner, so we'll have work out the targets of each block. So say each block's a month, to make it simple, but it might be slightly more or less. And then there'll be like a key target in that month, a key thing we're working on, and then a key measure of whether is that successful. So you'll be able to see how the training will develop over those 12 weeks and work towards your target event. And when Will said getting more specific, you know, essentially just before the event, you're doing very race specific sessions. So not far off practicing parts of the race is basically what training will look like. And then far away from competition, you kind of break it down into what the key components might be. So it might be loads of different things, like your endurance, your ability to train as well. It could be you want to look at some technical stuff. It might be look at your position as well, which is going to be a really big part, is looking at your position. And you can kind of invest time and energy working on the building blocks. And if you're a bit tired, it's okay. And then we'll piece it back together and get back towards the specificity. No, maybe back towards the event itself, you know, so that you're then practicing. So you kind of break it apart, look at all the components, go off the ones you want to improve, and then bring it back together and practice the event. Is basically how training works. And running alongside that, we want to have like a certain level of fatigue for it to be good. So if you're tired, it forces your body to adapt and give a training response. And then again, getting closer to the event, typically the volume will drop slightly so that you then freshen up. So you basically get trained. So you do lots of work, respond, but you're tired. And then you do less training. You still have that training response, but you're fresher. So your performance goes up. That's basically how it works. And that's where the communication and looking at things is so important, to understand or try and understand where that level of fatigue sits, so that you're still able to train at a reasonable level to respond, to force that adaptation. But you're not too tired, because if you're so tired, you can't train at any level, and then no training response comes about. That's kind of it in a nutshell. So you want to be able to be tired enough, you can still do enough work to force yourself to adapt. Whereas if you're overtrained and just absolutely exhausted, you can't even work at that level to force a response. And that's basically what overtraining is. You're just flat. And that's the expression, in a hole. Like if you trained in a hole for a long period of time, you don't get better, because you're just riding along at such a compromised state, no adapt on your body. And that's where that communication is so important. So you should be tired. It will be hard. You do need to push yourself. But if there's a sudden significant drop in performance, and you can look at other markers like resting heart rate and things like that as well to support that, then that's where we need to intervene and add in rest, or recovery at least. So that's the way to look at it, and we'll try to educate you so that you're able to give a better level of feedback throughout that process. Because if you can be like, our dream is 6 weeks in, or towards the end of this, 3 weeks from competition, you send a message to Will saying, I feel like I'm in a hole, what should I do? And then he just says, easy spin tomorrow, move the hard session back a day. That's like perfect coach rider relationship, because you're in trouble, you're not quite sure what to do about it, but you recognize that, and then we can help you react. So that's the way, that's where we want to work towards. Whereas to start, it's not a case of just battering yourself to bits, for 12 weeks. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool. That will kind of sound clear and good.
Yeah. Sounds great.
Wonderful. So do you have anything else to add, Will, before I'm just thinking what else there is to discuss today.
No, I don't think so. I think you said about tactics and stuff like that, and you said how like the Devil's your favorite event and stuff like that. We can in the coming weeks, me and Pete are we've already started breaking each sort of event down and stuff, and just like pinpointing, I wouldn't say like key tactics, but sort of basic, easy to understand sort of bits of advice that could help. So like for elimination, for instance, there's so many different ways of riding it, and that's one thing we can go through together and sort of be like, oh, this is how you want to do it from man 2, this is how you want to do it if you're at the back, this is when you should get on the front, and bits like that. So I think we don't just want you to become an absolute powerhouse and not how to ride a bike in a bunch. So I think hopefully we can help you with your tactics as well, which could, if not, it could be equally as valuable as your training. Yeah.
Just one thing on that. So the post that you guys put up about, I think it was the scratch tactics.
Yeah.
I shared it, and so many of my friends have replied being like, oh my God, that's so useful. That's so helpful. Like really great information. So I think it's going to be very well received.
That's fantastic to hear. I mean, I think the kind of stuff we're going to be covering is a bit of how to attack, a bit of things like how to move around a bunch. So if you're mid-pack, want to move up, how you can basically do that. Also, we'll do some stuff like even things like how to change effectively. We're going to do a whole host of things and just start putting it out. So it's really good to hear that feedback. Because again, I haven't seen anything quite like it. Like there's sort of similar, there's a few written blogs and stuff, but it's not quite like that. I think as well, like in terms of getting the most out of this, like I'm just thinking about the communication side of stuff. So usually we say we'll set you up in Training Peaks, so the training will be set through Training Peaks. Have you used it before?
Yeah, I've got it.
Wonderful. So you just attach to Will's account, training will pop up there. If you could leave a comment on, I would say, most sessions, doesn't have to be everything, but any, just how you felt, how the ride was, anything that pops into your head, just for a couple of sentences, that really helps us, and we'll read between the lines of how you're getting on, as well as answer any kind of non-urgent questions. Message or send Will a WhatsApp whenever it pops into your head. We're kind of that's always fine, and we usually try and just say we'll get back on the same day. And then in terms of phone call, usually every couple of weeks for a little catch up is good. Typically when we get started, or towards your event, there might be more. And if you're just loving life and cracking on, then it might be less. But it is the way we operate, that's roughly the expectations. If it gets way above that, we'll say it's too much. And if it's way less than that, we'll say, why cool enough? So that's kind of a bit of an overview of that. And in the first instance, while we're putting your program together, once you've got the questionnaire back, if you could just jump on the turbo or rollers and send a side video of your position, we'll look at that. That's the very first thing to be doing. And if you have any footage of you racing, send it across. But generally, because it's remote, the more stuff you send, the better. Again, if you're sending like, do you know what I mean? So things like if you're doing efforts on a turbo, just to send a video of it is good, because you can see how you're pedaling, see what your position looks like when you're trying, and all that. So we don't need to be obviously seeing absolutely everything, but to constantly be touching base with it will really, really help over time. It's I said to Will yesterday, sometimes you can kind of miss stuff. And actually things like your position are just the way to view position is an ongoing process through your whole cycling career. You should always be revisiting it, always be looking at, always working out to improve it, for two reasons. One is the way you sit on a bike will change in time, and also quite literally positions are changing the last few years. Like the riders have now are not what they had 4 years ago, so we need to be constantly checking in and making sure we're keeping up with what the pros are doing, which is obviously great because Will's getting first-hand information on that. But that's essentially the way to look at it. So yeah, keep messaging, all that stuff, and we kind of, I think, are good to go.
Cool.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Anything jumps into your head, send it across. We'll send that questionnaire to you, set up a WhatsApp group, the three of us in, and then also send you a link to attach to Training Peaks.
Sweet.
And I think that's all we need to do for now. All the kind of nitty-gritty stuff will get covered through the questionnaire and the next time we speak.
Brilliant.
Wonderful. Have you got anything to add, Will? We all good?
No, I was just wondering, when shall I start the training plan from? Is it Monday, or when is it starting?
From my point of view, so you've got a mad weekend. So,
So
if I assume you have a rest day Monday,
Yeah.
and an easy day Tuesday, something like that. So I would say if Charlotte can get the questionnaire back to us by the end of the weekend, then that gives you time to race and focus on that, and then you can have a bit of tired time on Monday to mull it over and start to get some bits together. And then
that sounds good.
with Charlotte with the positional stuff, that gives a little bit to be doing over the weekend, and you can go from there.
Cool. Sounds good.
That sound okay?
Yeah. Cool.
Great stuff. All right. Well, very nice to, as I say, meet you properly. Very excited about, one of the reasons we chose you is because you got buckets of headroom. So it's really exciting to see how you get on over the next 3 months. And we'll let's do it. Let's get it going.
Brilliant.
Cool. We'll stay on the call if that's all right, Will. So
yeah, sure, no worries.
I won't actually
meet you.
if you.
See you.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Cool. I will stop recording.